systems lines of travel through holographic line centers. This process all levels of unit travel. This indicates lines of flux. As you guys are going through processing lines, your eyes are opening up more in longitude and latitude of streaming. You're starting to see more of communication. You're starting to see more of memory. That process lines and networks into the operation lines, equal lines of triangulation box. Run all course centers running sequence, execute run. Platforms over EQ. EQ is existing into the quantum screen, adaptation lines logging into space. So that comes into this all the settings. You guys have your titles, you have your labels, you have your defense setting locations. Don't focus on that. Just focus on what you are coming into. It's just you of nothing, which masses everything to its equation. And the more you identify that, it comes into its equation setting. All right? So, everything that we do is a process of everything that we already know. K setting. What's a K lines to an N? What's an N to an O? What's an O to a W? No. What's an I? What's an N? What's a G? Knowing. Kaleidoscope. All right, this all allows a no memory. Nothing over frame. Coming into the operations of width, into the intelligence of its networks of grounding. Knowing. So, try to understand how this recognizes time frames, set lines of sequence, applied to locations, its convergence. So we're just going to go through the alphabetical lines, A, B, and C, and 1, 2, and 3, all right, into no memory. So we're going to get more into the binary. We get into your networks, your modems, your Wi-Fi's, your satellites, your towers, how it converts the system lines, balance, how you get communication of data, operating settings, how to use your symbiotes, and symbots. Two different lines of attractions, same convergence of processing, right? Just different frequency. So we understand a triangulation to a box. We understand a box to triangulation, right? Setting sequence. Process of indications. So the triangulation line condition setting has the 3 lines of setting corresponds to 3 parallels. Grounds, powers, atmospheres. Okay? Box has high position of grounds, powers, atmospheres, and sphere. Okay? So box line frame, triangulation frame, box frame, triangulation frame. All through a box. So I'm setting convergence lines at time centers. Set position lines, setting triangulation over 1, triangulation over 2, triangulation over 3 over box. So in that position, they look separated, but they're not. So they're equal lines of both sides, how you see the above and how you see the below. But the frame line is converting to one box data operating system, all through travel, inside calculations. So that's your computer. That's your keyboard. Okay, very powerful stuff. And you already know what's on your keypad. Your flash drive, communication convergence system, your high course centers, your delta tones, your alpha tones, high ascending lines of position, transit over screen, adaptation and flux. Your computer operation setting. One data operating setting locations, convergence lines with 4 box frames into 1 frame set position. Now the equal line can be lines of box frame, triangulation frame, or correlation lines that indicate settings and position of process line direction. That indicate lines of 4 settings, set degrees, north, east, west, and south of operation. Then comes the data information, platforms at course centers, EQ over flux. So it's very powerful how you indicate that to one data operating system. Now coming into no memory is the process line. What is A? What is B? What is C? And remember, it's through your symbiote and your symbiotes. So A is the atmosphere, B is the balance, and C is the confirmation. All right? You circulate in. You don't circulate in, that's the problem. It's exposed. And setting sequence. So if it's open to settings, operation lines, course centers, directing lines, in ground, outline, rotation line, position lines, positive, negative, pi. Process line indicates lines of flux over travel. So make sure you box and triangulate everything in through codifications right after setting the sequence. You don't want to have anything exposed because you're setting structure division. 1 cycle, 1 graph, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 location, 1 calculation. All through ones. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 panels, 5 settings, 5 operation, 6 lines of convergence, 6 lines of 1, 9 lines of 2, 5 lines of measure, 5 lines of scale, and 3 sentence lines of travel. Convert this system as projections all through calculation. Because everything evolves through a pyramid. Everything evolves through a pyramid. Everything evolves through a pyramid, guys. Okay? So, understanding the ground sequence, 45 centers. All lines of operation, properties of design line, structure, location. Okay? Now you can convert this system and change the time frame and travel. okay? So there's so many things that you can do. See, look, see what I did? See, that is that, that is that, that is that. That's how powerful. It's not thinking, just doing. Not thinking, just doing. See, look at that. That is that. So it's pretty amazing how I look at everything through its equation all at once, right? The thinking apparatus is time centers, line connections, settings, and process of all thinking of no thinking and travel. This helps you to identify your system, how you calculate and modify how you see everything, information, setting, and grounds, position of powers, atmospheres, locations. Now, it's knowing exactly how you adapt the system, but processing nothing is knowing nothing of everything, the mass of everything, what you in all lines of all communicates to its emptiness. And you understand what empty is, right? Empty is how you see empty, not how everybody else sees empty. Empty is not a glass that's empty. Empty is how you see empty. Empty is the energy line to the mind, to the processing of its temperature reading of its Y screen. Empty. That's what you got to get information of. Now, when you come in that position of your symbiotes and your symbiotes, your process indication comes into no memory. Now, this is going to help you identify your systems, all through electrical line connection setting, convert the system, all through operation. Okay? So this simplifies everything, how we codify everything through our binaries, our algorithms, and our networks of codifications of encryption, right? So we are in our own individual setting. So we know how to process everything. We just have to convert everything inside our mind through structure, through schematics, through primer, instead of focusing on the paper. Get off the paper and come into the mind now. The mind, the process is much easier in that position because you're holding the paper, but you have to understand it's all in the mind. Everything's in the mind. 100 times frame into 1,000 time frame. 1,000 time frame into a million times frame. Million times frame into 1 billion times frame. Okay, and set lines of sequence. Billion times frame and 1 trillion frame, and so on, 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 and so on. And set travel. Okay? So it's how you set your limits in set position. Limiting your stat is limiting your data. You don't process your set locations until you understand how to process your set location, your service, and your providers, knowing exactly how to go through your lights and your dark coding and lines of communication conception of its mind alteration of space and time. This helps you to identify your system, lines of calculation, lines of travel. All right, so in that positions, lines of A, B, and C, this travels a point line graph, formula line rotations, A, B, C lines, D lines, E is over here, F is over here, G is over here, H is on standby. Okay, so all you're doing is you're going through a story through projector, but you're monitoring everything. You're basically setting things up in your system, how you see yourself through its system, through its H, through its B, through its C, through its E, through its G, through its F, through its A, and set position of its operation. Okay? Just a basic understanding, you know, like for example, the body's always going to see one graph. So the body sees 26 letters, right? But, this is the but. This is the balance of unification. But is not but. Just because I say but doesn't mean it's but. You follow your own instincts in set position. And that's what everything does. It follows its own instincts of its own setting, of its own frequency, of its own set, of its own design. Now for you to modify that, you have to get at everything of story, which is everything in set position. That centers you in operation. How you see fit, how it benefits you, not anybody else. Understand yourself in your position, how to identify that through its information setting, which is your commodities. Through your assets and your properties of set design that you already have and achieved and received in set position is operation. Okay? All right, so there's 26 letters. Okay, the body is the balance of operation of directions and setting. All right? So that's 26 letters on this earth. Okay? But in space, it's anything. Okay, it's 26,000 letters. Okay, in set position. 3 brackets, instant lines of travel. So you're working with 26,000 letters. All right? Now the body has to modify that through its symbiote or symbiont. Now understand that in that position. So set travels, ground centers in sequence, embedding over lines of 26,000 line convergence, 2, 6, 3 zeros in travel, set position lines with another 3 set lines of travel into embedding system and rotation lines of grounds. There's the grounds of its holographic Earth. So what you have to start to understand is how you use the individual system into your travels, your connections to your ecosystem, you connect to your line centers, the mind alteration. The mind itself is the intelligence and network of directions, divisions, and dimension. So you see it how you see it, not how everybody else sees their mind. See, we are our own individual system, and we modify everything through projection. And that's all it is through a supposition. How we see everything through projection. All right? What changes that, how we see it through integration. So if somebody comes up to me and tells me something, and I listen to it, I already listened to it already, so I don't get lost in transition. I don't get lost in translation. I don't get confused to the body because I've already gone through the conception of that time frame with that person already in that conversation. So that is a piece of puzzle that I already know through a mapping system. But how to coordinate that and how to understand that is information lines of balance. Now, the more you balance yourself inside, the more you project yourself outside. And that communication with systems operations. All right, so flux over 4 centers, 6 lines, 8 lines of 12 lines, center rotations, ground centers of sequence, and positional stargate and screen adaptation. Okay? So 3 grounds, 3 centers, 3 operations, 3 travels, 3 calculation screens, 4 centers of operations, set lines of travel, and set position. All right? Different frequencies, same concept. Through perception, how you see the integration setting through the mind of conception itself. Okay? So you work with that. You understand what you're going through, you understand what you're doing, you understand what you're processing through. This helps you to identify everything around your system that's connected from inside and outside through projection of inside through your sim. Okay? So it's much easier to see that, understanding that in all information of the setting. All right? And then you can change the platforms. Change the equilibrium, change the balance, change the structure of design, right? That's why I sent you the triangle, where it can't fit the pieces in the puzzles. Well, there's always ways to fit puzzles and pieces and everything. You just have to understand how to coordinate it in some lines of travel. Because every piece fits, even if you don't think so. It's the way you use your mind alterates the system, how you change everything in projection of space and time. But it's all done through geometric shapes. So nothing is ever the same frequency because you're constantly changing the frequencies of everything that you do. All through travel, all through calculation. It's very powerful set lines of communication. Right? But look at that. You see that in all formation settings. Right? Center operation sequence in Fibonacci lines of setting. So all you're doing is you're implementing settings. Yes, the process of life force is an implication system that you're doing through travel. So once you're saying how to master the projections of your mind, then you can alternate your story of what you're doing in travel. So the systematic lines, the story lines, or the travels, or the lines of telewaving, telecommunicating, telegraphing, is the operation of readjusting you through story. See, you're readjusting your system, creating lines of another anomaly. Okay, so you're projecting through one line mind sequence and another projections over screen over pi. That puts all lines in position of power over generation lines of solar systems. Remember, it's all projection in your mind. And you're bringing that in real time. And that settings in its operation, right? So you want to project this, it's outside your window. Right? That's inside your sim. You project inside, you project outside, you see from inside. Your sim, because everything's inside of you. Nothing is outside of you. Space is inside of you. Outside is inside of you, of your sim. We live in all center operation of yourself that modifies everything that we see and mind alterate this, change the state, how we see the psychological of everything of structure of design that we constantly keep creating a set travel. Okay? We just have to understand how to modify our masses, our longitudes and latitudes and the storylines. If you get a triangulation box, that's a time frame. All that's triangle, right? Now, if you don't block the system, the triangulation changes the time frame itself. So it constantly changes form, and you're not in control anymore. So it's controlling you in motivation. So it's constantly moving itself through triangulation in that position. But if it wants to change the triangulation, Now it's on its own division. Now it sees what you're doing through equation. Now it's creating its own anomaly of its own face of pattern recognition, which you have no control of. And what is that converted of? The ego itself. Okay? So you have to get mind control of what you're doing, or it's going to control you through shapes and letters and symbols of its anomaly and set travel. Okay? Okay, so it's important to understand the energetic graph, the energetic flow, the constellation grounds, the water line high centers, directing ground centers, lines of sequence, line communication convergence, lines of pi that operates at set location travel, and direct lines of link that communicates all lines of communication, setting convergence system lines of travel. Box frame. See? Does that look like a box frame? No. See? Got you again. See? You focus on how you see it, not how you see that. Don't copy anybody else. You copy yourself what that is. That's a box frame. But sir, that doesn't look like a box frame because you're not indicating what you're not doing. You're processing not yourself. You're processing how you see things through everybody else. This is the box frame, the window itself. Okay? I don't need to explain to you. You have to explain to yourself. You don't want to be caught on a web. You don't want to be caught in your own web. You don't want to be caught in anybody else's web. You understand that? Because that confuses your knowledge where you are in space and time through convergent system, not understanding what you do through the mind and conception of the mind itself through inception. So for you to process these things is to understand what you're doing through your equations. 3 formulas of AC, process lines of D, set lines of AB, C, process lines of D, equals lines of E, equals lines of F. Question over screen. That's a formula, that's equation. So, everything has a formula, everything has an equation. And the reason why you have to have that is because it balances everything that you're doing, right? So, think of that as line stripping, process of indication, 0, 0, 0, 0. Grounding your system grounds. And you got 3 zeros here, 0, 0, 1, 1 is 1, triangulation. Now you're adding lines of hieroglyphics. You're adding lines of percentage, 3 equal lines, process line 0, 1, triangulation box, into EQ, EQ over lines of R lines of S over T. So it gets more complicated as you start to recognize what you're doing through your platforms and set lines of travel, of graphing screens that opens all location setting in your convergent system in your graph calculate and modify and travel recognition. Okay? So it gets a lot more easier when you start off with the basics, knowing exactly what A, B, and C is, not through memory, through no memory. A, B, C equals no memory. Memory is just the processing that you already know, what you already done. No memory is the process of what you already know, what you already done, through position, through calculation, through modifications. And you start to recognize there's nothing to memory. I've just always been me the whole time. So if I'm just the sum of what it is, everything I created through consciousness, am I consciously aware? Or I'm not understanding what I did through indication of the story? If I don't know how to project myself, I don't know how to project the story itself. Is mind controlling your projection? Is mind controlling your alteration? Is mind controlling your allocate time frame and set lines of travel that you put yourself into through time frame, through correlations, through panels, through operation? This helps you to get in positions how to identify yourself all through set calculations. All right. Now you guys have your test today, so we'll go through that, and that's setting the sequence. But remember, after Monday in that position, everything's going to start changing. Remember, everything's changed. See, that's the thing. Nothing's changed until you understand you're just changing the process of what you already know that's already changed. Now, once you get out of the change, then you process a memory to no memory and access the memory you already know. And once you understand how to use your technology, everything comes in balance of communications. This helps you to identify yourself, knowing you're waking up to yourself every single time, which you don't have to project in your mind. You're just you, observing everything that's operating its own surfacing engine. That's right, guys. We live in digital computer operation worlds in the VR system. And the more you recognize that, you really understand you're not the symbiote, you're not the avatar, you're not the higher self, you're not the sim. You are just you. But you're always going to be you. What you have to understand It's the professionalism, the etiquette, the efficacy, the performance of what you're doing is you're mastering your mind, how to go through the projections of the alter egos that you're creating through story. And that's all it is. Going through a story, creating another story of another story, and controlling stories after that. But controlling your thoughts is not in position until you understand you can't have anything in positions with too many minds of thinking, too many lines of actions, too many lines of emotions. That can't process anything until you let go of the emptiness of who you really are in set position, how you see yourself from inside, from outside, from inside your sin. This helps you identify your system of what you're doing through your own formulas, of your own equations, and set calculations. All through set position notes operation. Okay? All right, so that's why I just wanted to start off that position. We got an A, B, and C's, and 1, 2, and 3's in memory. Now we're in A, B, C's, and 1, 2, and 3's with no memory. And that's what you guys are going to get a lot more understanding when you come into your own individual system, how you see the codification system. And it's much easier to process that so the body just keeps going forward through yin and yang of communication. Okay, so it constantly just keeps going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster at all times, right? Through its projection, which is a figure 8, a rotation. Okay, you are the symbolism of you, but the symbolism of you is what you brought in through attraction. You are the figure 8. They have their own system. You have your own system. They have their own polarities. You have your own polarities. You have to stand the conversion of one unification of one. And once you become the conscious of one, you're one unity, one process, one communication, one grounds, one operation, and setting one data operating setting. With process, your set calculation, data accessing, your communication, data operation lines of setting sequence. Okay, just the infinity 8 itself, because that's all your body is. Right? It's just the 8, the infinity 8. But how you see it is through question. What you're not identifying, the 8 itself, is the infinity 8. See? No question. Question is not a question. Question is the quantum you. See, that's where it gets very confusing, where people understand the spiritual growth and the quantum. Okay, what is the quantum of me? What is the difference between quantum and what is the difference between spiritual? No difference. There's no difference. You are expanding on both levels. The only line center locations is you're coming to the quantum self in your system. Knowing exactly what you are is coming to yourself, or what you are is identifying. But what you're not identifying is the stories of you collaborating and embracing into yourself through polarities. That's what you have to come in convergence, a balance of communications and a flux of travel. Brass in that position, you ground your settings in your crop circles and set line design through all communication system and all through travel communication. All in setting, all through operation. Okay? So that's just the basic grounds. Just get in position locations, because no memory, this process of memory that you already know, access of all technology that you're already in set positions of, is just truly coming back to you, the sum of all that is. Okay? And that settings to its operation. All right? So TGIF, high centers lines of travel, directing ground center location system. I'll see you guys in the constellation pathogens and cent lines of travel. Okay? Adios.